It was a day Medina would never forget, the day the ground drank the blood of hundreds. Over 600 men of the Banu Qurayza tribe were executed in a single sweep. Their lives ended not on a battlefield, but in a trench dug for death. The Banu Qurayza had been cornered. After a long siege, they surrendered, expecting negotiation, perhaps exile. But the decision that awaited them would not be about peace. It would be about elimination. Accounts tell us that the Muslim forces, under the command of the Prophet Muhammad, handed the tribe's fate to an arbitrator, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. His verdict was chilling. Every fighting-age male was to be killed, the women and children enslaved. No trial, no defense, just a sentence of mass death. One by one, the men of Banu Qurayza were bound and led away from their families. Mothers clutched their children, watching fathers, brothers, and sons vanish toward the execution site. The air was heavy with dust, fear, and the sound of chains dragging across the ground. A deep trench had been dug into the earth, not for shelter, not for defense, but to hold the bodies of the dead. It was the kind of preparation that leaves no doubt. This was planned, this was deliberate, and there would be no survivors among the condemned. The silence broke with the thud of steel meeting flesh. The first man fell into the trench, his blood seeping into the soil. There was no pause, no ceremony, just the relentless rhythm of killing, one life after another. The process became mechanical. Men were lined up, hands bound, forced to kneel at the trench's edge. A blade would strike, the body pushed forward, and the next man would take his place. Hundreds stood waiting, watching their fate inch closer with every heartbeat. From the edge of the killing ground, women and children were forced to witness. Mothers screamed until their voices broke. Children clung to each other, staring as fathers and brothers vanished into a pile of lifeless forms. The sound of weeping mixed with the metallic smell of blood. The sun shifted overhead, but the executions didn't stop. By the hundreds, the men of Banu Qurayza fell, their names and stories swallowed by the trench. Executioners rotated to rest their arms, but the killing never slowed, a machine of death powered by obedience. When the last man's body dropped, the trench was no longer just a hole in the ground. It was a mass grave. Dust and sand were pushed over the heap of corpses, erasing faces from sight, but not from the memory of those who had been forced to watch. When the killing stopped, silence fell. But it was the silence of grief, not peace. The women and children of Banu Qurayza were rounded up, their cries ignored. They were led away in chains, stripped not only of their homes, but of their freedom. In the days that followed, the captives were divided. Some were taken as slaves by their captors, others sold in markets far from Medina. Families that had survived the siege were now torn apart forever, their fate sealed by the swing of a sword and the greed of war. The victors told their own version of the story. They called it justice, claimed the tribe had broken alliances, painted the massacre as lawful punishment. It was a narrative meant to bury the crime beneath the language of righteousness. For those who remained in Medina, the message was unmissable: defy the Muslim leadership. And this could be your end. The massacre wasn't just an act of revenge. It was a warning carved into the city's memory with 600 blades. Centuries later, the massacre of Banu Qurayza remains a wound in history for some. It is retold as a story of justice. For others, it is remembered as one of the darkest crimes committed in the name of faith. But no matter the spin, the truth is unshakable. Hundreds of men were slaughtered in one day. not for what they did in battle, but for who they were. Stand at the edge of that long-forgotten trench, and you can almost hear it. The muffled cries, the clash of steel, the final prayers whispered into the dust. The massacre of Banu Qurayza was not a battle. It was an execution, carried out under the banner of faith, but driven by fear and power. 600 men silenced in a single day, their voices buried, but never truly gone. And as history turns its pages, the question lingers like a shadow. How many more crimes have been justified by the stories the victors choose to tell?